On Gravitas tonight, we focus on the key takeaways from the crucial SCO Summit, decoding the messaging, the optics, and the dream of a new world order defining SCO. All this coming up for you shortly. And here's a look at what else is lined up on the show tonight. We assess the impact of the SCO Summit developments on the global markets and what that tells us. Also getting you the latest from on the ground in Afghanistan following that major earthquake. What are things looking like on the ground? All this and more coming your way. What happens when the leaders of India, China and Russia walk into a room? Well, they don't just meet, they define a new world order in a way. And in open defiance of the West, especially the United States, that's what was on display at the crucial SEO Summit in Tianjin, when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi joined the Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, along with leaders from other participating nations. The atmosphere was one of bonhomie, all handshakes and smiles, even laughter. Prime Minister Modi used his first trip to China in 7 years, in fact, to reset ties with Beijing, while deepening India's time-tested partnership with Moscow. And in his meeting with Vladimir Putin, Prime Minister Modi declared that India and Russia have always stood shoulder to shoulder, especially in difficult times. And in turn, the Russian leader called Prime Minister Modi his dear friend, even chauffeured him around in his armored limousine. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi also held talks with Xi Jinping in Tianjin, both sides pledging to be partners, not rivals. Border tensions resuming direct flights, boosting trade, topped that agenda. The bonhomie between Prime Minister Modi, President Xi Jinping, President Putin, coming against a very different backdrop, of course. US President Donald Trump has publicly lambasted India for buying oil from Russia. Washington has not just unfairly accused New Delhi of funding Putin's war in Ukraine. Last week, it slapped 50% tariffs on Indian goods headed for the United States. It's a penalty meant to make a point, to make India the scapegoat in a way, in what is essentially a West versus Russia conflict and has nothing to do with India. Just today, Trump's aide, Peter Navarro, accused India of profiteering from the war by buying discounted Russian oil. Of course, New Delhi has pushed back and reminded Washington that it was the US itself that once told India to buy Russian oil to keep global oil prices stable. But it doesn't matter what spin Trump and his administration want Americans to believe here. India's stand on Ukraine has not changed. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, made that clear even before arriving in China. He spoke with Ukraine's president, reiterating India's call for peace. Zelensky, in turn, said that New Delhi was ready to deliver the appropriate signal to Russia and other leaders during the meetings in Tianjin. And on Monday, at the SEO Summit, Prime Minister Modi told Putin that he hopes Russia and Ukraine can move forward to end the war soon.
यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे, संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा। ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है।
Trump's actions and what is the undoing of decades of careful US-India strategic partnership building in a way sent out a clear message. India cannot depend on Washington. Now more than ever, it must carve out its own path and find its own partners. In fact, just before arriving in China for the SEO Summit, Prime Minister Modi stopped in Japan, remember. He walked away with investment pledges worth $68 billion from the Japanese Prime Minister. And the deal goes far beyond trade and covers semiconductors, critical minerals, artificial intelligence, clean energy, even space cooperation. Coming back to SEO, Vladimir Putin acknowledged India's consistent efforts for peace, praising both India and China for contributing proposals to resolve the conflict. Putin acknowledged India's consistent efforts to push for peace in Ukraine. He also framed the SEO as the foundation for a new Eurasian security system, one that could replace what he described was an obsolete Euro-Atlantic model. And Prime Minister Modi, meanwhile, described the SEO as a guiding light for multilateralism and an inclusive world order, and pressed for stronger action against terrorism. Prime Minister Modi also used his time to press on the importance of condemning terrorism shortly after India won the SCO backing against terrorism, as the summit declaration condemned the Pahalgam terror attack, echoing India's stand. It is a diplomatic win for New Delhi, especially as Pakistan, which has long backed cross-border terrorism, is a member of SCO, and its Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also was attending the summit. SCO member states further said perpetrators, organizers and sponsors of such attacks must be brought to justice. Chinese President Xi Jinping used his address to outline his vision of a new global order, one that openly challenges the United States. He pledged $280 million in free aid, $1.4 billion in loans for SCO members, urging them to leverage their mega-scale market in fields from energy to AI. In what was a very pointed jab, in a way, at Trump's tariff war, Xi Jinping also urged members to reject Cold War mentality.
Fairness and justice, promote a correct understanding of World War II history, and oppose Cold War thinking, block confrontation, and acts of bullying. We safeguard the international system with the United Nations at its core, support the multilateral trading system centered on the World Trade Organization.
Now, what's become clear this week from the recent developments is that India has become an influential power, which, along with other Asian countries like Japan and China, will be at the helm of what Prime Minister Modi has called the Asian century. This is one of the byproducts of the new respect that India has achieved. India has become a star power because it stood up to a superpower on principle. And the ripple effect is visible already. Japan has broken off trade talks with the United States. The pushback has started. Countries once hesitant are now willing to challenge Washington openly. A new Asian confidence is taking shape. Meanwhile, Trump supporters have run out of reasonable defenses, it seems. The world is watching. President Trump will have to realize that his actions have only weakened America. And the message from the SEO Summit is loud and clear, that the world's balance of power is shifting. As the West closes doors, the East is opening up new ones. Meanwhile, the market's expecting a tectonic shift in the global trade order, with the world's established trade routes and geopolitical alliances under strain. The recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin emerging not merely as a diplomatic meeting, but one that has investors watching very closely. The seemingly cordial handshake between the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President was more than just a gesture. It was a powerful signal to global markets that the two Asian giants are recalibrating their compass away from a unipolar US-centric world order. And this perceived thaw in relations has sent out a ripple of optimism through the Indian markets. The Sensex and Nifty indices have logged solid gains, but the real story is in the targeted sectoral rallies. Beyond the headlines, the summit's assurances on rare earth and raw material supply from China has turbocharged India's renewable energy and electric vehicle sectors. Shares of EV makers rallied sharply, benefiting from the prospect of a more stable supply chain for its products. Gold and other safe haven assets, meanwhile, rallied sharply on Indian exchanges, hitting fresh all-time highs on the back of geopolitical uncertainty and a weaker Indian rupee. The Indian rupee also hit a record low against the US dollar today, and this reflects a broader sense of caution among investors, despite the sector-specific gains. The geopolitical chessboard is also impacting the skies. The restoration of direct flights between the two nations is a potential boon for the aviation and tourism industries. While direct stock impacts in China remain nuanced, the market has taken note. And the market reaction was felt globally. In Asia, the SEO Summit's outcome contributed to a positive sentiment. European stocks, meanwhile, were also seen to be trading higher, though US markets were closed for a holiday, which kept trading volumes thin. Shifting focus now to Afghanistan, a magnitude 6.0 earthquake left over 800 people dead, thousands injured. In eastern Afghanistan, entire villages, in fact, have been reduced to rubble in many parts, dozens of houses destroyed. In what is being feared as one of Afghanistan's worst earthquakes, several injured were recovered from the damaged sites and carried by choppers to the hospital. Other images showing a helicopter carrying casualties landing on the runway and soldiers rushing to help the injured with medical aid assisted by the locals. Rescue operations underway with teams trying to reach people in the remote areas hard to access and many pleading for urgent help.
This is Mazar Dara in Nurgul district, Azizabad village. Almost the entire village has collapsed. The earthquake struck at midnight. Children are trapped under the rubble. The elderly are under the rubble. Young people are under the rubble. We need help here.
And according to the Taliban ministry, the earthquake killed at least 600 people in the eastern provinces of Kunar and Nangarhar alone. And the toll continues to mount as several remain missing. Authorities warning that a disaster of this scale is bound to burden resources of the country, reeling under aid cuts.
The earthquake struck around 12 a.m. We moved to the area at 1 a.m. We were in contact with other departments. Since the road was bad, we reached the earthquake-struck area early in the morning on foot and started treating the injured.
The humanitarian loss drew reactions from around the world. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended his condolences over the huge loss of lives as India sent food and other aid supplies in this hour of grief. Questions also surfacing on how a shallow earthquake with this magnitude and a depth of only 8 kilometers managed to cause such extensive damage. Shallower earthquakes tend to cause more damage and are often followed by a series of aftershocks. At least 5 in this case, which continued throughout the night. Afghanistan is not new to deadly earthquakes. In October 2023, an earthquake in Afghanistan's western province of Herat killed at least 2,400 people. As per the Taliban administration, in September 2022, meanwhile, at least 8 people were killed after tremors hit Konar province. Major earthquakes also caused a great deal of damage in the months of January and June the same year. And the latest one has reignited fears of broader risks in the region as well as in the neighboring countries. In fact, countries like Pakistan, Nepal, sharing tectonic zones with Afghanistan, all of which are located near the junction of the Indian and Eurasian plates, a highly active tectonic area. And this essentially means that tremors in one part can very well impact the rest. In fact, experts warning that earthquake stress can migrate like it did for this one, shaking buildings from Kabul all the way to Pakistan's Islamabad. And here's a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We are getting you updates on the latest developments with the Houthis claiming they struck an oil tanker. This comes after their prime minister, remember, was killed in an Israeli strike, reportedly. We are piecing together the developments for you. That's coming up next. Also getting you the latest from Indonesia, where protests against extravagant perks for the country's lawmakers have turned violent.
Apa yang menjadi
We're telling you all about a medical marvel with doctors reportedly developing an AI stethoscope that can detect major heart conditions in just seconds. All this and more coming up. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim they struck an oil tanker with a missile. The attack comes just days after their prime minister was killed in an Israeli strike. Israel warning that it will continue to target the Iran-backed groups. In Yemen, there is rising anger as thousands mourn and the conflict spirals further out of control.
The waters of the Red Sea just grew more perilous. Yemen's Houthi rebels have confirmed a missile strike on a tanker, signaling they remain defiant despite losing top leadership in a deadly Israeli strike. The Iran-backed rebels who sank 2 tankers in July said they targeted the Liberian-flagged Scarlet Ray, claiming a direct hit. The UK Maritime Trade Operations say that the attack missed its target. Israeli warplanes killed the Houthis' prime minister and senior officials in Sana'a. The assassination sent shockwaves through Yemen, with vast crowds filling the streets for funerals. Images of mourners, banners and gunfire in the air highlighted how the Houthis are rallying their base, framing the attack as both a loss and a call to arms.
Through this crime, the enemy wanted to pressure the Yemeni people into easing its position, but it will face stronger resistance on the military, political, and popular fronts. The Yemeni people cannot be deceived, nor are they afraid. We do not fear martyrdom.
Israel has been striking Houthi positions for months, vowing to dismantle the group's ability to threaten shipping lanes and regional stability. The Houthis insist their missile and drone strikes are part of their campaign to support Palestinians in Gaza. The Red Sea, one of the world's busiest maritime arteries, is now a flashpoint. Shipping firms are rerouting vessels, fearing more missile and drone attacks. West Asia stands at a knife's edge. With the Houthis striking tankers, Israel intensifying its air campaign, and Gaza still burning, the lines of conflict are widening. What began as a proxy war is now threatening global trade, energy supplies, and regional security, with no respite in sight. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Public opinion regarding the war in Gaza is seeing a major shift. New polling data showing support for Israel slipping sharply, especially among America's youngest voters. A survey conducted by Harvard Cap's Harris poll asked more than 2,000 registered voters a straight question. In the war between Israel and Hamas, who do you support more? And the results reveal a major generational divide. Let's break it down for you. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 said that they stand with Hamas rather than Israel, while older generations, in contrast, favored Israel. The survey numbers depicting the generational contrast. Roughly 2/3 of Americans between 25 and 34 support Israel. 7 in 10 of those between 35 and 44 take Israel's side and support climbing as high as 89% among those over 65. And the survey by the American market research and analytics company and the Harvard University also asked whether Israel's war campaign in Gaza amounts to genocide. On this question, the public split evenly. Half said yes, half said no. And when asked about criticism of Israel, 51% of the respondents said it stems primarily from concern about Palestinian human rights, not anti-Semitism. And these results perhaps depict a fundamental change in how Americans are viewing the conflict, especially the younger generations. You see, for decades now, Israel has counted on strong support in the United States. But this poll perhaps indicates that support is weakening and the generational gap is driving that factor. Nearly 2 years into the war, more than 63,000 Palestinians have died in Gaza, famine spreading through the enclave, deepening an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Israel also faces mounting legal pressure. Last November, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants, for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, accusing them of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Israel is not just losing support within America, but also around the world in many ways. Greta Thunberg, the Swedish climate activist, has joined a flotilla bound for Gaza this week. Dozens of ships are preparing to sail from Tunisia and other parts later this week, aiming to challenge Israel's blockade with a symbolic protest. And according to Israeli newspaper, the country's national security minister is reportedly drafting plans to detain Thunberg and other activists under harsh terrorist-level conditions, quote-unquote, in Israeli prisons. His proposal that would reportedly be presented before Netanyahu also includes seizing the ships and converting them into vessels for police use. Amid all of this, the Trump administration is reportedly floating a radical new plan for Gaza's future. According to the Washington Post, the proposal envisions placing Gaza under U.S. trusteeship for at least a decade. The document, reportedly 38 pages long, outlining an economic blueprint to transform Gaza into both a tourist resort and a tech hub. Palestinians who agree to relocate outside the enclave would receive financial incentives, including rent subsidies and food assistance. And the plan projects that up to a quarter of Gaza's population might permanently leave during reconstruction. Inside Israel, leaked documents are raising new questions about the military strategy. A classified assessment circulating within the Israel Defense Forces concluding that the major offensive launched against Hamas in May failed to achieve its central goal. It reportedly states that Israel, quote-unquote, made every possible mistake in executing the campaign. Every possible mistake. Together, the survey data, the humanitarian catastrophe, the situation, the legal challenges, even Israel's own internal assessments, pointing to a rather sobering reality. Israel is losing not just on the battlefield of global opinion, but also when it comes to the confidence of its allies and its own military ranks in a way. In China, after meeting President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, the Russian president said NATO's eastward enlargement would have to be addressed for there to be sustainable peace in Ukraine. Our next report now getting you the latest from the battlefield and how things are moving on the diplomatic chessboard. A thunderous roar, then silence. A Russian Iskander missile, precise and devastating, ripped through the night, obliterating a critical Neptune missile system. This is not merely a loss of hardware, it's a strategic blow, undermining Ukraine's attack capabilities and sending ripples through Kiev. Russia has increased the intensity of attacks on Ukraine. On the ground also, Russian forces are constantly moving forward. Russian Defense Ministry claiming that approximately 1,245 Ukrainian troops were killed in the last 24 hours. A grim tally underscoring the relentless pressure on the ground. However, independent verification of the claims is not possible due to the fog of the war. Russian strikes have plunged over 60,000 homes into darkness, particularly in the vital Odessa region. President Putin, speaking from Tianjin after talks with President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, issued a stern rebuke to the West. He lambasted NATO enlargement, asserting forcefully that the root causes of the war must be eliminated.
The second reason for the crisis is the West's constant attempts to draw Ukraine into NATO, which, as we have repeatedly emphasized and said over many years, represents a direct threat to Russia's security.
Now, on the other hand, President Zelensky plans to meet with European leaders in Paris on September 4, as he is urging his allies to do more to help end the war. With missiles slamming Ukrainian defenses, homes plunged into darkness, the war is grinding into an even darker phase. One where firepower and geopolitics collide head-on. Bureau Report, WION The World. Shifting focus for now, a lot rests on the US Supreme Court in the tariffs case. This comes after an appeals court ruled Trump's action on taxing global imports as illegal. In a verdict on Friday, a panel of judges basically said Trump had exceeded his authority by imposing global tariffs. And the case adds more uncertainty to the US trading partners and on Trump policies. Our next report telling you more.
The US Supreme Court has dabbled in a number of Trump administration cases recently. However, the legal fight over the president's global tariffs would place the justices squarely in the middle of an issue central to his economic goals. In his relentless pursuit of more executive powers, Trump has declared a number of emergencies that is over and above his policy priorities, which he claims enable him to take unilateral action disrupting global markets. He did this by imposing 10% baseline tariffs on almost all countries and even more on some nations. Trump cited national security concerns for his actions. He also used the fentanyl trafficking emergency to impose additional tariffs on Canada, China, and Mexico. However, 11 of 15 judges across 3 US courts called Trump's tariffs illegal. They concluded that he extended his authority and lacked the necessary legal basis. Ahead of the appeals court ruling, Trump's cabinet officials had warned that declaring tariffs unlawful would have a devastating impact on American foreign policy. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned of dangerous diplomatic embarrassment. Trump's allies filed statements in support of a request that any ruling against the administration be immediately put on hold until the US Supreme Court issues a final decision. Lutnick had said failing to do so would have devastating and dire consequences. But the appeals court ruled against the administration. The verdict also gave the president a deadline of mid-October to appeal to the Supreme Court before the ruling took effect. Separately, the judges sent the case back to the lower court to determine if it applied to everyone affected by tariffs or just the parties involved in the case. The twist, though, is that the appeals court cited a recent Supreme Court ruling as a guideline to the lower court to scope out the verdict. Recently, the US top court had ruled that judges should limit their verdicts to the parties involved in the case. That ruling barred judges from issuing so-called universal injunctions that go beyond the parties in a case and apply nationwide. But the Supreme Court left open the possibility that judges in some cases could use other legal mechanisms to reach the same outcome. Several judges used different mechanisms to reissue nationwide injunctions against Trump's birthright citizenship restrictions. That made the sweeping orders still appropriate under the new Supreme Court standard. Trump's chorus-singing administration expects to eventually win the case. Perhaps the president's best hope is the dissent penned in Friday's ruling by Judge Richard Taranto and 3 other judges. They say IEEPA uses broad language to provide flexibility in the tools available to the president to address unusual and extraordinary threats. Peter Navarro, White House Senior Advisor on Trade and Manufacturing, says the dissent presents a very clear roadmap to how the Supreme Court can rule in their favor. The real question now is, can Trump really get his tariff agenda through the Supreme Court? If not, will he be able to get the Congress to veto it, or would he face any difficulty? The tariffs case against the Trump administration was filed by a group of small businesses and states led by Democrats. The lawsuit challenged Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to sidestep Congress and issue the tariffs. The case argues that Trump did so to force trading partners to negotiate rather than to address any legitimate national emergency. IEEPA does not mention tariffs and has never been used in such a manner. They have also argued that a ruling against the tariffs must apply across the nation. That issue may now become a focus of further arguments. Trump's policy shifts away from the long-established Republican Party's take on free trade. The president's decision to impose the policy change unilaterally rather than through legislation has exposed legal loopholes. Democrats have criticized Trump's tariffs. Many questions still remain, even as a final decision could still be many months away. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Indonesia is on the boil. Protests against extravagant perks for the country's lawmakers have turned violent. At least 6 people have died in a showdown. The government has announced that it will be stripping the perks, but the population that is reeling under rising cost of living continues to take the anger out on the streets.
Protesters, troops and violence blazing on the streets. World's largest archipelago is in chaos. Indonesia's government is facing strong headwinds. Extravagant perks for the lawmakers, police violence and rising inflation has fueled this anger. Protests began last Thursday. Triggering point was the housing perks received by the lawmakers. The amount was $3,000 a month. That is 10 times the average wage of a person living in Jakarta. This show of anger and dissent against the government quickly spread across the different parts of the country. During the initial hours of protests, demonstrators approached the parliament, where the thing got tensed and then turned violent. Protesters hurled stones at the police that responded with tear gas. The situation deteriorated further after a vehicle of country's police allegedly ran over a taxi driver. At least 6 people have died in the violence that followed. Protesters torched regional parliament building in Makassar, killing 3 people trapped inside as the flames spread. The home of Indonesia's finance minister Sri Mulyani was also ransacked. The growing turmoil forced President Prabowo Subianto to reverse course. He has now pledged to scrap lawmakers' perks, including a controversial $3,000 housing allowance.
Para pimpinan
The leaders of the People's Representative Council have reported that they will revoke some of their policies, including the amount of allowances for members of parliament and a moratorium on official visits abroad.
termasuk
Country's capital has been forfeited. Soldiers are patrolling the vicinity of Parliament. The armored vehicles have been deployed to safeguard the building. Country's defense minister has issued a sharp warning. The officers will not hesitate to take firm action.
Officers will not hesitate to take firm action against rioters and looters who entered private areas or state institutions that have been ensured to always be in safe condition.
As of now, the streets of Indonesia are relatively calm. Major students and civil society groups have suspended the demonstrations. But the next wave of protests looms, as demonstrations are yet to be called off. For now, the forces are holding the line. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Switching gears for now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has inspected a new missile factory, a facility that the state media says is central to his plan to accelerate mass production of weapons. And the inspection coming just before he departed for a trip to China for the big Victory Day parade. Take a look. Our next story is about a rather interesting trend that's being witnessed. Chinese students heading to Southeast Asia for higher education. This is as per a report by South China Morning Post. Let's just break this down for you and give you a better sense of what's being reported and what's playing out. According to Education Malaysia Global Services, a government-owned company in Malaysia responsible for managing student visas, Chinese applications saw a rise in the first half of this year, reportedly, as compared to the figures reported for the same period of 2024 and the figure recorded in 2023. That's a sample of what's been reported. In fact, the immediate question that also comes up is what explains this? Which are the factors at play? Also, which are the countries part of that list of these destinations? Interestingly, in focus is Southeast Asia, not parts like Europe or the United States. And what's been playing out is closely tied to manufacturing firms expanding abroad. There's also the aspect of China's slowing economy. And if that continues to happen, affordability is a key factor. Simply put, making Southeast Asia manageable for middle-class families. So basically, Malaysia serves as a rather attractive destination, for instance, because of factors like lower tuition, also affordable living costs. Thailand and Indonesia are also options. In fact, for example, data from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization indicating a jump in Chinese student enrollment in Thailand when comparing the figures of 2016 and 2024. So that's telling as well. In fact, as per the report, members of the ASEAN bloc of Southeast Asian countries have become a new frontier for Chinese capital. And there's also the aspect of rising graduate unemployment in China, which is leading to students opting for postgraduate degrees abroad. But at the same time, there is caution being sounded off by experts. For example, about how opportunities in Southeast Asia might not be as high as people imagine, and a number of parameters at play which will govern whether this trend lasts and whether it continues in the long term. Artificial intelligence has made strides in just about every field. Medical science is no exception. Doctors, thanks to AI, are now able to detect critical heart conditions in seconds. Literally. And the magic wand they seem to be wielding for this is an AI-powered stethoscope. According to a report by The Guardian, the AI stethoscope, developed by a team of researchers from Imperial College London and Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, can identify a total of 3 heart conditions within 15 seconds or less. The instant diagnosis can be a real time saver so that the patients can be given the treatment that they need without wasting any more precious time. And the report says that the AI tool can also perform an ECG right then and there, filling in the doctor's monitoring the case with quick and efficient inputs. And the workings of the AI stethoscope demonstrated on about 12,000 patients across 200 UK clinics reportedly. But how different is it really from a traditional stethoscope is the immediate question. A traditional centuries-old stethoscope has been a medic's trusted companion, of course, for locating conditions by listening to sounds within the body. And now this AI stethoscope is not just a mere upgrade, but something which can diagnose the lightest of variations or anomalies in heartbeats, as well as the blood flow that can bypass human hearing under normal circumstances. Experts suggesting innovations like this one could transform cardiac care, minimizing risks of heart failure, heart wall disease, abnormal heart rhythms going undetected, and can prove to be life-saving in ways more than one. Deep in Sweden's Arctic forests, Europe is building its answer to the global space race. The Space Center in Kiruna is being touted as a future hub for satellite launches, security missions, and even commercial opportunities. Officials saying the facility could help Europe reduce its reliance on the US and South America. Here's a detailed report.
We're standing right now on the base area of S-Range, which is 4 square kilometers, which is fenced and guarded 24/7. But apart from that, we have a 5,200 square kilometer area stretching from here and north almost to the tip of Sweden.
Is something we've seen also in a different context in the 1960s. And on the other side, you see, and that is maybe the biggest change of recent times, space for security and defense. And this is certainly the context in which all European action has to be seen.
It's important to society because we all need data. all those apps and all those applications that need data as a base. So there is a huge growing need for more satellites in orbit. We will go from 8,000 to 55,000 satellites until 2030.
Monsoon fury continues to wreak havoc in northern parts of India, and the scale of the damage is only growing. The relentless downpour triggered floods, waterlogging, landslides in many parts, bringing daily life to a standstill. Central and northern regions have been hit the hardest. The monsoon season has left behind a trail of devastation in the state of Himachal Pradesh. Torrential rainfall ended up swelling up the rivers far beyond their banks. Authorities have suspended the pilgrimage, leaving more than 15,000 devotees stranded. Since the monsoon started, relentless downpour and triggered disasters have claimed over 300 lives in the hill state. In Jammu and Kashmir, rescuers struggle to clear boulders and mudslides that have blocked critical routes. In Ramban, landslides buried stretches of the road under meters of debris, while flash floods in Riyasi inundated low-lying areas, forcing hundreds to flee their homes overnight. Authorities warning that with rainfall showing no signs of easing, the danger of additional floods and slope collapses is looming large. In Uttarakhand, the Chief Minister has warned that the next 24 to 48 hours will be crucial. He said the authorities are relocating families from the damaged and waterlogged homes to the safer areas, with disaster response teams working round the clock to minimize the casualties. Heavy rain, meanwhile, lashed Indore, flooding large parts of the city, sweeping away cars, leaving behind residents battling waterlogging throughout the day. The sheer intensity left drains overflowing, streets resembling rivers in some parts. Several colonies and squares were submerged. The national capital, meanwhile, has been drenched this August like never before in recent memory. It has already crossed its annual rainfall mark, forcing the Indian Met Department to issue a flood warning for some areas. According to the Indian Meteorological Department data, by August 30th, Delhi recorded 390.3 millimeters of rainfall, which is the highest for the month in 15 years. The last time Delhi saw anything close was back in 2010, when August clocked 455.8 millimeters of rain. Over the next 5 days, Delhi and its neighboring parts are likely to witness an active monsoon spell for the next 5 days, bringing more light to moderate showers. Heavy rains in neighboring Gurugram, meanwhile, caused major traffic jams with vehicles stalled in waterlogged streets. In response to these severe weather conditions, the government has issued a work-from-home advisory to help ease the commuter difficulties and ensure safety. It sounds like science fiction, but now it's becoming a startling reality. Scientists have developed a brain implant capable of reading our hidden thoughts. This medical miracle promises to transform lives, but it's also sparking urgent ethical debates about privacy and control.
Imagine a world where your unspoken thoughts are no longer truly your own. That world is closer than we think. Brain implants, once the realm of futuristic novels, can now translate pure thought into action or even text. For patients unable to move or speak, this technology is nothing short of a miracle. It offers a voice to the voiceless, a connection to the world previously unimaginable. But this incredible leap forward is shadowed by profound concerns. A report from Stanford University, which has been at the forefront of this research, highlights the immense privacy risks. If a device can interpret your silent intentions, what prevents it from accessing your deepest secrets, your unformed opinions, or even your subconscious desires? The line between private thought and public access could vanish. The ethical questions are immense. Who owns your thoughts once they can be read by a machine? Could this technology be exploited for surveillance, for advertising, or even for coercion? The potential for abuse is chilling. While the immediate focus is on medical benefit, the rapid advancement of these mind-reading chips demands a swift and serious global conversation.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In recent years, images of human traffic jams on Mount Everest have shocked the world. Long lines of climbers gasping for air and trash, even human waste, piling up on the roof of the world. And now Nepal is stepping in with sweeping new rules that could change the face of high-altitude climbing in the country forever. Starting today, solo expeditions on any peak above 8,000 meters in Nepal are banned. That means no more lone adventurers on Mount Everest or any of Nepal's towering peaks. And from now on, every team must climb with certified mountain guides or altitude workers. Just to put it simply, whether you are a first-time trekker or a seasoned mountaineer, the message from the Nepal government is clear. You don't do it alone. And that's not all. Climbing Everest just got more expensive. According to a Nepalese government gazette reportedly, the spring expedition, the most popular season between March and May, will now cost foreign climbers $15,000 in royalty fees, up from $11,000. Autumn climbs have jumped to $7,500. While winter and monsoon expeditions will cost the climbers around $3,750. For Nepalese climbers, the spring season fee has doubled to 150,000 Nepali rupees. The changes have likely been made keeping safety and sustainability in mind. Since 1921, at least 340 people have lost their lives climbing Mount Everest reportedly, of which 144 have died since 2015. That's nearly 42% of the total casualties. It is estimated that Mount Everest is also littered with approximately 50 metric tons of waste accumulated from decades of climbing, which include abandoned tents, heaps of plastic waste. To tackle the pollution crisis, climbers this year must pack out everything they bring up, including human waste, with biodegradable bags now being a mandatory part of the gear. The Nepalese government has also tightened access to the base camp, barring family members of climbers and workers unless they get prior approval. Officials saying the move will reduce congestion and improve logistics during crowded climbing seasons. Since Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay first reached the summit in 1953, nearly 8,900 people have stood atop Everest from the Nepalese side. The era of the solo Everest dream is over, it seems. The highest peak on earth now demanding greater teamwork, higher fees, and more responsibility. Time now for Gravitas Worldview. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Stay tuned to WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Vielleicht nur als 5%.
Welcome back to WION The World is One. We're glad you're watching. Time now for Pulse. I'm Eric Njoka. The headlines. Taliban authorities rush in rescue teams to quake-hit regions of eastern Afghanistan, with scores transported to hospitals in provincial capital Jalalabad. At least 800 people are feared dead in a magnitude 6 earthquake in the northeastern Kunar province. India sends in humanitarian aid and tents for 1,000 families. Big signals of Modi-Xi-Putin bonhomie as a keenly watched SEO Summit in Tianjin, China comes to a close. Detailed talks between Modi and Putin amid bonhomie as the two travel in the Aurus vehicle ahead of a bilateral meeting. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says global governance should rely on coordination and cooperation rather than unilateral bullying, stresses that global governance dominated by a few nations must not continue. India's Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri says the country's adherence to all international norms prevented a catastrophic $200 per barrel shock. Puri rubbishes charge that India has become a laundromat for Russian oil. Ukraine's foreign ministry criticizes Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit declaration for avoiding topic of Russia's war in Ukraine. Hundreds of students gather on the streets in major Indonesian cities, defying fears of a crackdown on protests after deadly riots over the weekend. 6 people feared dead as massive protests forced President Prabowo Subianto to make a U-turn on High Parks for lawmakers. Germany-led multinational naval exercise Northern Coast 2025 underway in the Western and Southern Baltic Sea. 2,500 soldiers and 40 ships from 14 NATO nations rehearse moves to protect the Baltic Sea region. The exercise is to continue till the 12th of this month. Heavy rains lash the Indian capital region, throwing life out of gear, waterlogging and traffic snarls. These are images from Gurugram, where there is a massive traffic jam. Britain sweltered through its hottest summer on record, says UK Met Agency. Mean temperature recorded at 16.1 degrees Celsius, surpassing the previous record of 15.7 degrees Celsius recorded in 2018.